And why do we have pets on the show, you may be asking? What is going on? Are we trying to be Ozzie and Harriet? I don't think so. What we're trying to do, and we're going to discuss tonight, is the reality that pets, especially pets that are loved by human beings, that they do actually survive death of the physical body. We will show that tonight. We will prove that tonight through our conversations with Ed and Lorraine and with Mr. Illigino. I'd like to start out with Ed. And Ed, can you explain about tonight's program, about the pets?
Okay. Any animal lover will be very interested in our program tonight because, beyond a shadow of a doubt, animals do survive the grave. That is, they also have souls, believe it or not. We know that people write to us maybe once or twice a month telling us that they had a dog or a cat, it died, and yet the animal seems to be in the house. They hear it, the way it ran around, they hear it jump on the bed, they feel it. We've had cases like that of our own. Our own German Shepherd, who we had for 14 years, and that's a painting over there of him, died, and one night I went out to throw the garbage out in the backyard, and there was a military-type doghouse. And Major would sit on that doghouse, very erect, just like I have him in the painting there. And he'd sit up like this, and I'd take the chain off, and he'd come into the house with me. Mm-hmm. Well, I went out to take the garbage out that night, and I rounded the house, and there was the ghost of this dog sitting on that military-type doghouse. I stood there and watched it for a few seconds, and I started to go towards it, but it disappeared. I backed up, and it came back into view again. Mm-hmm. Now, being in this work, I realized that I should have just stayed right there. I walked in, and I got Lorraine, and I got Judy here, brought them out. I didn't tell them what they were going to see, and this is what they seen. If we could throw a camera on that painting over there, that's exactly how he looked when I seen him sitting on that doghouse. Mm-hmm. And Lorraine also.
Was he solid like that, Ed?
No, he was transparent.
Transparent.
He was transparent, but there was no doubt in my mind of what we were looking at. The three of us all seen it, and I was waiting patiently for the next night. I wanted to see if he would return.
Yeah.
Not only wasn't the dog there, but neither was the doghouse.
What happened?
The old man next door who would take care of Major for us took the military-type doghouse, built it into a tiny doghouse for two puppies I got for Lorraine. Oh. But that was the last night that the doghouse would be there. And we've always had a feeling that Major was in our home and on the grounds. This was a wonderful animal. It was almost human, I have to tell you. Mm-hmm. And we attribute a lot of our luck in this work and everything to that dog. Mm-hmm. Because it was because of that dog that we bought the small cottage up in Monroe, Connecticut. So that while we were away, the old man down the street would take care of him, bring him in at night, and we'd be gone a week or two at a time. And it was because of that dog that we started our studio, our painting studio. We're both artists. And then one of the students, a man who was a manager of a bank, had suggested that we show the paintings of my hauntings that I had painted. And that was the start of, you know, our public image.
Yep. I mean, I'd like to just touch on a point, if I could, about the psychic ability of animals. Now, do you believe that animals have psychic ability?
Oh, I have no doubt whatsoever, Tony. I have no doubt. I also feel that we, as individuals, as humans, have the ability to heal them through spiritual means. I believe that we can do that. I pray all the time, as I pray for my family, Tony, I pray every night to St. Francis for our animals and for any animal who needs our prayers. And it is amazing. Of course, I have a lot of devotion to St. Francis, and it's amazing the situations that we find ourselves in regarding saving the lives of animals. And we'll say, I know that he must have directed us in this area. But regarding their psychic ability, when we are involved in certain cases, I've walked in the house after being involved in real bad cases where the dogs and the cat will actually walk backwards away from us. And they sense and know your emotions. They sense your feelings. They're very loving and caring. When you need them, they always seem to be right there for you. They seem to sense even more than people will sense just how you feel at given times.
It's like an unconditional kind of...
I was on Okinawa, he was on Okinawa.
That's right.
And we started talking a little bit about, Iwashima Bay and Buckner's Bay and the air raids, the kamikaze suicide planes. And then it got around to Tony here being seriously wounded. Shot in the legs, I believe.
Shot
Tell us
from the
about
hips
that, Tony.
down.
From the hips down.
Yes, we went into an attack. We were positioned ourselves during the evening, and finally in the morning, we went into an attack. And I had a very courageous squad leader, and we occupied a hill just a little ahead of the line. And the whole line got pinned down by machine gun fire. They call them Nambu, Japanese Nambus, which were very accurate guns. And my squad leader asked me, he said, Tony, he says, see if you can knock out one of the machine guns or other machine guns and return the fire, So I returned the fire, and the BAR, which is what I shot.
Browning automatic rifle?
Right. Was a very feared gun by and respected by the Japanese, and who in turn were very accurate with the mortar fire. And they started dropping mortars in, and my squad leader says, it's time we get out of here. Two of them got out, first. And I wasn't fortunate enough, and neither was another gentleman who was in the hole with us. The mortar landed in the hole, and my companion died on top of me. And of course, his flesh was all over my body.
Oh, boy.
And I couldn't move. And to say that I was in pain would be an understatement. And frightened, scared. I thought about what the reaction would be home. And I says, I'd probably be in the headlines in the paper, a local resident killed in action. And I thought about things briefly that flashed through my mind that were thought about when that were very intimate to me. And finally, I was afraid that the Japanese would come in and bayonet me to death, or maybe even worse, be captured, and some terrible things happened to some of the Marines that got captured. I kind of said a prayer to myself, and years before I went into the service, I used to do some hunting and fishing, and I remembered the animals that I shot and killed, and I thought how terrible it must be to be shot at, like these two machine guns that were shooting at us, and then the mortar. And I said to God, I says, if I ever get out of this, when I get home, I'll feed every animal that walks, crawls, or flies. And
Beautiful.
all of a sudden, I saw a brilliant, brilliant light, and it was accompanied by a sound. How to describe the sound, I can't do it. It was unusual and continuous. And the louder the sound got, the brighter the light got. And to me, it was the most moving, most feeling experience of my life. I went through a terrible time, but I would not reverse that day for all the money or anything on this earth. It was a lesson, and it taught me something that I could carry the rest of my life, that really nothing means anything until because your final existence is, or not existent, is death. And that is what we all live for. So I think about it every day. The memory has never left me. Every day I walk in the park or the woods, I think about it, and it keeps me going.
Do you feed the animals?
I feed them every day. I've never missed a day except when I was in the hospital.
And you're called the Birdman, too, right?
I'm called the Birdman of Trumbull. It was in the Trumbull Times. And I've rescued many animals And I've had many heartwarming letters from people who heard about me and what I did saving their animal or somebody else's, and it was rewarding.
It seems to me like maybe that's the reason you didn't die then, to help animals maybe. Maybe God had that kind of purpose for you.
I think if St. Francis met me, I think he'd be embarrassed.
That's adorable,
You're a
Tony.
good man, Tony.
Thank
you.
That's
Because
beautiful.
Irene and I, we love animals the
We're
same way.
such animal
Constantly
lovers.
picking up, but
Hey, you know, we didn't
whole-
show the pictures of Tony
Oh,
and the
yeah.
six
Oh,
Marines.
yes. Oh, yeah, we
this
have
I'd like
to.
to show the
Tony
pictures
when he was
of
in the
Tony.
Marine Corps.
And Tony, are you in the middle here? Is that you?
I'm
right
in the, I'm,
there? Right, Tony.
I'm on the left in the middle.
Okay, left in the middle. Okay, let's hone in on this little picture if we could. And what year was this taken, Tony?
Possibly 1945.
45. Okay, and where are you? Right? Are you? I think you're right here.
That's me right there.
There's a tall, dark, and handsome right
Handsome-looking guy
there.
there,
Oh,
Tony.
my
Now you're in the
God.
6th Marine Corps.
6th Marine Division, 22nd Marines.
Okay. What rank were you?
I'm sorry,
What rank were you?
corporal.
Corporal. All right. And now we got another one picture, and you and your sister right here. This was probably about the same year.
That's my sister. She was in the waves, and I had
Oh.
5 brothers and 1 sister, and altogether we had 7 in the service.
7 altogether.
We practically won the war alone.
No kidding. Wow.
That's
A
beautiful,
lot of
Tony.
animals are happy that you survived.
Right, right. And I want to say that I have a brother who was with the Army in Germany, and he won the Silver Star and the Bronze Star.
Wow. That's
So-
Oh,
fantastic.
that's
was a medic.
beautiful. That
That's
is beautiful. It's a
fantastic.
privilege to know you,
Right.
Tony.
That
It
kind
really
of that all
is.
kind of ties in with the love of your
But
fellow
you had
human
Yes,
beings.
it
experience too,
does.
Tony.
I had
Ye-
experience too.
How about your dog?
I could talk,
Yes.
but I think Lorraine is better at telling it than I am.
It's-
But I'll start it.
All right.
I had a dog, a border collie, and the dog's name was Lucy. I found
That was
her.
your first dog, right, Tony?
My first dog. I found her on the highway on Route 84, traveling on a high-speed lane, just bouncing along, and she was just prone to getting hit. And my wife and I stopped and got the dog, rescued the dog, and the dog had like just a lot of what are the things that are on, you know,
Oh,
the suckers? I can't remember.
birds.
Ticks?
No, ticks.
Ticks.
Had like 5 or 6 ticks. She was all dirty. You could
Oh,
tell
she was
she was on the
a
road
mess.
for a long time.
Yes.
Rescued the dog, kept the dog for about a year. The dog was old. 1 year to the day that I picked that dog up, we had to have the dog put to sleep.
And I have
July
to say
5th.
that you would take that dog, I know for a fact, every day after you got out of work, you'd take it up swimming.
I'd take him
running.
to the reservoir.
You and that dog
Yeah.
were like
we were
that.
like just very
It,
close.
it was almost
I
like it
saved
was a
that dog
child.
3 times on the highway.
Yes.
Then I saved the dog when he fell through. She
Fell-
fell through the ice,
ice.
and I heard this howl. I was in my car, and I just thought she was, lingering to come back to me, but she fell in the water under the ice, couldn't get out, and I ran in and grabbed her. And then once we were hiking through the woods, she just like had an attack of some sort and wouldn't get up. I had to carry her a mile to the car and back to the vet. In any event, a year to the day we had to put that dog down, and it really killed me to do that. And I was working at a group home at the time for the mentally retarded, and just about 15 days after my dog died, I was at this group home, and an exact copy of my dog comes around the corner in the kitchen, and the manager of that group home said, "Hey, you want a dog? I found this dog. We're trying to find a home for it." And the dog was identical to my Lucy, my dog Lucy. Took the dog home. The dog adapted to the house like it always lived there, right? The most affectionate dog, like the most thankful kind of dog, always come up and licking your face and things like that.
yes.
I believe that dog is an incarnation of Lucy.
So do I.
I really do.
I do too. I believe that dog is a reincarnation.
I still
of
have the
us.
dog today.
He still has that dog.
Can
Now,
I tell you a story about
Yeah,
my
sure,
dog? That
sure.
speaking of animals, and of course I love animals too, and my wife does. We had a German Shepherd that I had bred, and I had given to my brother, but eventually I ended up taking care of him, and his name was Gino. He was an Italian German Shepherd. So.
Ate a lot of salami.
So he got hip dysplasia, and which isn't a serious. It's probably more problem.
A lot of shepherds get that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because
It's more
of the slope.
problematic than
It's
it is.
hereditary, and it's probably poor breeding.
Yes.
So anyway, the dog, people says to me I should put the dog to sleep because he couldn't walk. But I carried him every day, and I took him out to the bathroom, and he was happy, and he wasn't suffering. But public opinion was against me. They said you should put him to sleep because he no longer can walk. And so it was a snowy, very, very fine snow. It was a night to be remembered. It was a picture-perfect Christmas day, about an inch of snow on the ground, and falling softly. And I says to my wife, Norma, I says, Norma, I'm going to go down and check on Gino, see how he's doing before I go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I went down, and the dog was laying there. He looked up at me. There didn't seem to be in any problems, no pain. And I knelt down by his side, and I said, please, God, let this dog die. The dog looked up at me. His eyes grew wide. His mouth opened wider, and he shivered all over. His tail shook, his body shook, and he died.
Oh, my God. Oh, my
That was the same way with our dog.
Exactly when you said that you wanted
Right.
to God
Oh,
to take
my
it.
moment
God,
it
Ed,
came
that's
out of my
almost
mouth.
like ours.
He waited for you to get up just like our shepherd. We used to get up at 7 o'clock, right on the dot every morning, and I'd play this program, Marching Around the Breakfast Table. I don't know if you remember that. It's an old program.
Yeah.
And Major would walk him back at me, and he'd march him
Lift
back at
his
me,
legs up.
stamping his legs like that
Yes.
on my heels. And the night before he died, I said to Lorraine, if Major doesn't feel better, by tomorrow morning we're going to have to take him to the vets and have him put to sleep, which
And I-
would kill us.
Oh,
And so we went to bed that night and woke up the next morning, and the dog was right at the foot of our bed, and Lorraine went in to get some coffee. It was
no,
just
some water
around
for him,
7.
honey.
No, not yet.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, that's right.
And all of a sudden, the dog couldn't stand up. He couldn't sit up. We had to carry him to take him to the bathroom. He sat up. He looked at me right in my eyes, and I said, Lorraine, Major's getting up. I said, get him some water. But by the time she got the water, the dog looked right into my eyes
His eyes got big.
and
They know.
went over and died.
Yeah,
But
he's,
he waited for us to get up that morning at 7 o'clock so he could say goodbye to us.
almost
That's the
identical.
beauty of animals.
Oh.
You know, people talk about an animal is just an animal, they have no feelings. That is not true. Animals have feelings. They're sad, they're depressed, they're happy. They have the same feelings that we have. You shoot an animal, and it's like shooting a person. They feel that same way. That's why I say, when we go out and I see a bunch of hunters, and they have these high-powered rifles, I'm thinking to myself, they're going out there to kill something that has a family. You know, it has
like deer or
babies.
Yes.
Right. And sometimes they just wound it. And the thing runs around for miles before it dies. I've
In
seen
pain,
arrows
suffering.
sticking in animals, in deers, in the back of them. And I thought to myself, my God, what pain those poor animals must be going through. But animals do survive the grave through the love of a human being. This is well known.
Yes.
You love a parakeet, you love a dog, a cat, that animal will survive the grave through that love. What kind of a heaven would it be without animals, right?
So
We
you think
have-
that when we take our final breath and we go to see our Maker,
We'll feel our dogs licking our face.
I hope
I
so.
believe.
I hope
I hope
that's
and
true.
pray we
There'll be a lot
do,
of licking
Tony.
your face, Tony.
Yes, I know
Tony,
that
it's
will-
ironic, you know, that if you spell dog backwards, it spells God.
I know.
You know.
Yes, isn't that
Telling
beautiful?
you. And
Yes.
He did a good job when he made dogs.
Yeah, they sure
to,
did.
And to prove how sensitive and how feeling that they have, I was going to work one time. It was early in the morning. It was like twilight. And I go around the corner, and there's a big black Great Dane sitting on the curb. And I started to go. I felt he was just loose, but something made me back up and want to know why he was sitting there. It would seem to be unusual.
Waiting for you, Tony.
Right, he certainly was. So I looked down, and right at his feet was a dead Labrador dog.
Wow.
And apparently they were partners, but he would not leave that dog. So I got out of the car, I walked over to him, and every time I made an approach to the dog, the Great Dane would come after me, and he meant business. All I can see is white teeth and a big head.
Jeez.
And it took me an hour. I finally, after an hour of approaching him and going back, I finally put my hand on the Labrador, and the dog started to cry like a baby, just whining and whining. And I was able to pick up the Labrador and put him in my wagon, and the Great Dane jumped right in the wagon with me. I found out the dog, somebody had they had moved from North Carolina, and somebody had opened the gate of their new house and let the two dogs out.
Oh, my God.
And one was his buddy, and he stayed there to protect him, and he whined for him. He felt the sympathy for him.
See, he grieved.
I got a case here about 10 years ago that I just wanted to talk about quickly. A woman in Waterbury called me up, and she said, Mr. Warren, I had a very strange experience. She told me that her husband and their German Shepherd had been killed in a car crash. The husband had been killed 5 years before. And she always felt that both of them were around. And they'd walk along this tennis court at night with the dog, let it run and everything. And so she continued to go on these walks. And one night, as she was walking around, suddenly she was grabbed from behind. The man grabbed her, started to strangle her, throwing her on the ground, and all of a sudden, he let her go, and he ran. She could never understand why he stopped, but they caught the man. And he said that the reason that he stopped choking this woman and trying to knock her to the ground was because a man and a dog appeared, and the dog was snarling at him. There was no man, there was no dog.
No.
That was the husband and the dog.
Wow.
But yes, Tony,
Isn't that wild?
They do survive. There is.
Do you
no
want to tell
doubt.
us real quickly about Greyfriars Bobby?
Oh, Greyfriars Bobby is in Scotland. It's in an area of Scotland, and it concerns a dog that was befriended by this man. And this man didn't live right in Edinburgh, Scotland itself. He lived outside of Edinburgh. And he became very, very ill with pneumonia. And he walked in to Edinburgh with his dog Bobby, and Bobby stayed with him. He never quite made it, Tony, to the hospital. He got to a shelter, and he kept the dog under him to keep him warm.
Kept him in his coat
In his,
because the dog wasn't allowed to go into that shelter.
and so but the dog was keeping him warm, and he was keeping the dog warm. Well, he died, and he was buried.
Yeah.
And they paid, the town people there kind of paid for this burial site because he was really more or less a pauper, the man. He didn't have any money. Well, that dog, Tony, he was at the funeral. He followed that man to the grave, and until the day that dog died, which I think was about 12 or 13 years later, that dog stayed at that man's grave.
Every morning,
At the grave.
every morning that dog would go up the street. All the shopkeepers and everything knew Bobby, and a butcher would feed him, give him some food, and he'd go right to the grave,
And
and
lay
he'd
there?
stay on that grave until dark, and then he'd go back to where he slept. And the city of Edinburgh, the mayor, all knew about Bobby, and they actually bought him a license so that he wouldn't be picked up.
That is
Yeah.
wild.
And
That
then-
is
and
beautiful.
you-
There's
That's
a monument to
beautiful
him.
There's a monument to
story.
him. You know that, Tony.
Oh, yes, I'm well aware of the monument.
Yeah, there's a beautiful monument to it, and there's a statue of Bobby, which really looks a lot like Gizmo,
A lot like Gizmo.
who has now gone and sat down on the carpet there right in front of us because
well-
I think she was warm.
Glad we have these conversations about pets
So
because
am I.
we all love pets here. I'd like to thank Judy Penny and her dog Benji and Tony Eligino and your stories. Welcome back. You can come back anytime you'd like, Tone.
Okay.
Ed Warren, Lorraine Warren, you can get us at P.O. Box 41 in Monroe if you want to send any cards or letters or requests. Until next time, I'm Tony Sparrow. Good night.